Do you remember the first time that you heard it? That song. That disturbing frequency. You were likely young, maybe sitting in a dark room, the light of your Game Boy flickering in the dark. You were in Lavender Town. You didn't know what it was that made it feel unsettling. You just knew that something inside of you didn't like it. For a place in the Pokémon world, usually a game filled with joy and collecting as many Pokémon as you desired, Lavender Town was different. Rather than having that happy feeling that the rest of Pokémon Red and Blue had, it was a really interesting moment in the series, where you were presented with death. Lavender Town was about loss, a burial ground for dead Pokémon which was stylized to be haunted, very different from the usual welcoming and inviting feeling of other towns in the game. Around 2010, the idea of Lavender Town Syndrome would start to surface on various online communities. At first, it was just quiet whispers of a potentially sinister side to the Pokémon games, but as the theory started to spread like wildfire, people were becoming genuinely freaked out, and they started claiming this.
The first documented cases of the Lavender Town syndrome and associated events were reported several months after the release of Pokémon Red and Green for the original Game Boy. These games were particularly popular with children between the ages of 7 and 12, a fact that undoubtedly contributed to why the Lavender Town syndrome had such a pronounced effect. In one part of the game, the player reaches Lavender Town. While being relatively unremarkable upon first impression, it does feature a large tower known as Pokémon Tower, which supposedly contains the graves, remains, and spirits of thousands of dead Pokémon. In the summer of 1996, it was reported that the Lavender Town music, which played in the background as the player explored the area, was causing children to suffer from a variety of strange medical issues. According to leaked internal documents, numerous young people had been suffering from obstructed sleep, severe migraines, ringing in the ears, profuse nosebleeds, and even uncharacteristic streaks of violence after they had been exposed to the music. In approximately 70% of these cases, the children also reported a sudden onset of self-harming ideations.
It was then said that the music that was causing all of these problems had actually been removed from the newer versions of the game, hence why we aren't still seeing cases of this nowadays, and that those who experienced Lavender Town Syndrome had actually been playing an earlier edition. That's why when the rumours of this were spreading all around the internet, they were genuinely believed, because why else would the company actually take the time to make a new theme and replace the original? Why would Nintendo erase any evidence that this had ever existed? What were they really trying to hide? The mystery just continued to get deeper because some people figured out that if you ran the theme tune through an audio spectrograph, which is basically a visualization of an audio track, then you would spot some creepy frequencies. In one case, one person noticed that the frequencies were creating a visualization of the sprite used in-game for ghost Pokémon. In another instance, one user reported that the text "Leave Now" was being spelt out by the spectrograph. So after all of this, it was said by people following the mystery that Nintendo was actually covering this up in order to protect the Pokémon franchise. Of course, they wouldn't want the harm of thousands of children being on them, so it would make sense that they would take steps to hide the truth. But in reality, none of this was actually true, although some people genuinely still believe it to this day. And while it isn't true that the music actually led to anything as bad as what was included in the creepypasta, Lavender Town and its music is infamously unnerving to a lot of children. You might even be one of them. Firstly, Lavender Town was designed to be scary. It is essentially a mass graveyard after all. Secondly, the music is definitely intentionally creepy in order to match the theme that the town was going for, and it certainly can be very difficult to listen to for longer periods of time. But although the creepypasta may seem completely out there are actually some details that are grounded in reality. In 1997, an anime was released in Japan, but it made headlines all around the world because flashing images that popped up in one of the episodes were actually causing seizures in as many as 600 Japanese children. Most of the kids were fine after the incident, but 2 of them actually had to be hospitalized for an extended period of time, and all of this resulted in the anime being pulled from broadcast for some time. And another disturbing detail, the anime was actually based on Pokémon. So although it may not be as extreme as Lavender Town syndrome, it certainly stands out as an unsettling example. But although the music of Lavender Town was the first piece in the puzzle of creating an unsettling atmosphere in the ghost town, there are many other aspects that are just as bad and caught the attention of thousands online. Have you ever seen this image? Pretty creepy, right? This was alleged to have been found on the final floor of the Pokémon Tower in Lavender Town, and although it has now been replaced by a ghost-type Pokémon in versions you can play today, initial claims stated that this dead trainer was actually meant to be the final boss of the tower. You would not encounter this thing until you reached the top, but once you did, you would be met with some very creepy dialogue.
You're here. I'm trapped. And I'm lonely. I'm so very lonely. Won't you join me?
Of course, this would haunt players to the core, but it was only after you actually triggered the boss fight that you would get a full view of what appeared to be a decaying human corpse, attempting to crawl out of the ground. He would be armed with 2 white hands, a Gengar and a Muk, but strangely enough, it seemed as though this was where your battle was meant to end, because there was no code written for what would happen if the player were to actually defeat him. It was almost as though you were meant to lose to this unsettling creature, and if you did beat him, your game would freeze. Your save would have the chance to become completely corrupted. But one ending was eventually found. However, the outcome was no better. After defeating the boss, who was codenamed Buried Alive, the creature would say, "Finally, fresh meat," before dragging you into the ground where he came from in the first place. You would then be flashed a game over screen. However, this wasn't your typical defeat. In the background, you would be greeted by an image of Buried Alive devouring your player character. And after the scene, it would continue to haunt you. The background image would be saved to the small internal memory that the Game Boy had, and this would overwrite the title screen every time you would launch the console, along with this disturbing background track. In the end, the mystery of Buried Alive would also be mostly proven to be a hoax. However, some aspects of this actually carried over to the actual game. The white hands that were mentioned as being used in the battle were actually referenced by one of the characters, who calls Lavender Town their home. If you approach this NPC and speak with them, they will ask you if you believe in ghosts. If you say no, then she will reply by saying,
Haha, I guess not. That white hand on your shoulder? It's not real.
This may seem like just a throwaway comment, but it is interesting in the grand scheme of things, and likely one of the reasons why some people actually believed that Buried Alive was real. After all, he does have 2 white hands that he uses to fight you. But although he may not be, the white hand reference has continued over the years. In an episode of Pokémon Origins, Red is asked whether he believes in ghosts, and when he responds with, "No, I don't think so," the other person responds by saying that the white hand on his shoulder must not be real then. And for a couple of frames, eagle-eyed viewers can actually spot the white hand as well. But even if White Hand and Buried Alive may not actually be real, we can still appreciate the quality of the sprite that someone made for the White Hand. Quite impressive if you ask me. In the future editions of Pokémon, Lavender Town has actually returned, but as time has passed, the creepy music is no more, and the tower has been replaced by a radio tower. Some players have created headcanons though that Lavender Town syndrome had actually carried over to the game, and that that the citizens of the creepy town were experiencing a higher death rate compared to the rest of Kanto. In-game, they decided that the amount of spirits present in the Pokémon Tower may have been to blame, and so they replaced it with something that would omit what they suspected ghosts would not be fond of: electromagnetic radiation. However, some players theorize that in-game, the dangerous ghost that haunts the building may have never left, and that sightings of Buried Alive, with his eerie white hands, may have never actually disappeared. So we've spoken about haunted towers and horrific entities, but what if it turned out that you were actually the bad guy all along? During your time in Lavender Town, you meet your rival, who you battled earlier in the game, and he asks why you were there if none of your Pokemon are dead. So that begs the question, why is he there? And why is he missing his Raticate that he had used against you in the past? Your previous battle against him took place on the SS Anne, a luxury boat that was docked. You would end up beating him, and it is theorized that after that happened, his Pokemon was badly injured, and he couldn't make it to the center in time to heal it. This is why you encounter him in Lavender Town next, because he is actually there to lay his now dead Pokemon to rest. Seems intentional, right? It is claimed that because he doesn't outright accuse you of killing his Pokemon, he puts on a front of his usual cocky self, because he doesn't want to show weakness or extreme anger. He doesn't really act any differently, and a lot of people discount this theory because of the fact that nothing really changes. He is constantly not a very good person throughout the game, and people who don't believe in this argue that the reason we never see Raticate again is because he simply decided to stop training it in favor of better Pokemon. By the final battle, he does claim that he has built a set of the best Pokemon who are capable of taking on any type, so that does add some weight to the opposite side of this argument. So those are the mysteries, but the real question remains, why were we so attracted to Lavender Town? What was it that was so fascinating about this little town of death that made us go back time and time again? One thing that stands out to me is how directly a game like Pokémon stared death in the face. For a game that teaches you to catch them all and build the strongest deck possible, Lavender Town is a grim reminder that even your strongest companions are not invincible. They are always at risk of death. And this is highlighted further by the fact that there is no boss in the Pokémon Tower. Buried Alive isn't real. There is just no reward. It's simply ghosts, overarching grief, and many, many unanswered questions. And we were the ones who made all of these theories, even if very few parts of them were actually grounded in reality. All we knew was that we had a music track that made us feel nervous, we had a town that creeped us out, so rather than dealing with the actual reasons why, we concocted theories about ghosts, dead trainers, and a much deeper horror story. Because Lavender Town is terrifying, precisely because nothing happens. There are no jump scares. There is no real threat posed to you. It's almost as though it's empty. And that's where the horror really shines, because it isn't built on a genuine thing lurking in the shadows. Rather, what unnerves us is the amount of emptiness. We don't get any closure. There is no resolution. And realistically, that's how the characters are feeling, because they are grieving, and we can almost feel their pain. And we like to believe it was real, because we don't want to handle the truth, that we can't explain what it really was that terrified us so much about the haunted town. And that is the scariest part, that the horror wasn't in our Game Boy cartridge, but all in our heads. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share the video if you did enjoy, and hype it as well. That really helps me out. We're almost a quarter way to 100,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for 24k. I can't believe that we're almost at 25k now. You guys are just great. I really appreciate you. You don't even understand how much I appreciate you. And also, you may have noticed something a little bit different in this video if you are a regular viewer of the channel, and that is that I have no glasses because my idiot self left them on the train. So yeah, I have no glasses. I went for an eye test today as I'm recording this, and they are giving me new glasses now after I paid them a lot of money. So yeah, the glasses will return soon, and I know one of you guys keeps asking me to get cat eye lenses, and I did try. I did try cat eye frames. They did not suit me in the slightest, I am sorry to say. But don't forget to check me out on social media. I have Instagram, Blue Sky, and Twitter. And if you want to get more involved with my little community, then you can join my Discord server using the link in the description. Thank you so much to my Patreon supporters and YouTube members: Alex Rod, K4 Silver, Entreprenaut, Collecti Brooke, Carmella, Basefinger, Midnight Kitty, Willow, Briar, X-Fizzy, Shoshka, Frozen Roses, and Greenlee. I'll be back very soon with another video, but if you want another right now, then YouTube thinks that you'll like the video that's on your screen.